We are taking an early look at next year's pending free agents. Who's going to sign extensions early, and will anyone hit the open market? All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. I'm Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm here each and every Friday with Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. How are we doing, Gil?
We are doing well. It's Friday. We made it through another week, and, weather's still hot, but hockey's getting closer with each passing week.
Yes, it is officially August. So next month, we can say that camps will get going. So that is always good to say. In the meantime, the New Jersey Devils hired a whole bunch of people in their hockey ops department. And obviously, the most interesting name on that list is Chuck Fletcher, who is coming on as a senior advisor to the president of hockey operations and general manager, which is a very long-winded title to say he's going to help Tom Fitzgerald out with contracts and player personnel and all of that. But what's your take on Chuck Fletcher re-entering the hockey management biz?
Well, it runs in the family, as we know, and I think, he's got the experience. He can certainly be helpful. I think it's a solid hire. What about you? I mean, he was at the helm of the Flyers, so I think you would have a little more insight there.
Yeah, I just find it to be so ordinary and so predictable for the Devils. And, for a team, I think now this team, it could be very successful on its own, no matter what management does. I think given the lottery luck they've had, as well as just really good draft choices, and they have an excellent prospect pool and some great young players. So this team is headed in the right direction. I don't know what Chuck Fletcher brings up as far as something new or different, or that extra edge that's going to take them over the hump, because he hasn't been able to do that with other teams, but he is just an advisor on the side. He isn't the GM. So what effect will he have? Probably minimal. I don't think it'll cause the Devils any harm, but I also don't know if he's going to help either.
Right. And we know, since he's not the head guy, and because the rules have changed, we're not going to see any 13-year, $98 million deals like he handed out to Zach Parise and Ryan Suter back in the day in 2012. And both of those guys are still going to hurt the Wild's cap until 2029.
Yeah, Andy Green was also on that list, former captain of the Devils. Always nice to see alumni join the organization in that way. He's an advisor as well. They added some scouts as well, including Ryan Fitzgerald, the son of Tom Fitzgerald, which read that how you want to.
A little nepotism, but then, Manny Legacy and Jeff Sanderson, some very familiar names to hockey fans. So, good to see them staying in the game and being active there with the Devils organization.
Yeah. Besides that, the only other real news, Hockey Canada named assistant coaches for their Four Nations team that could end up being the assistants for their Olympic team in 2 years. And that's Bruce Cassidy, Rick Tocchet, and Pete DeBoer will be joining John Cooper, who is already named the head coach. So they're getting going on putting their management team together, and hopefully they lose. I'm just going to say it, because I am such a homer for Team USA in these things.
Oh boy. Oh, look, I'm looking forward to a really good tournament.
I know. I am
start
too.
with that.
I
But
am too.
you know, pretty solid staff though. All things
Oh
considered.
yeah.
So
Oh yeah. That is a great staff. Honestly,
exactly.
I think Canada is going to have the advantage in this one for sure. But don't count out USA, Sweden, or Finland here. Moving to our main topic of the day, looking ahead to next summer's free agents. And the one that I think has been talked about the most, simply because we've been told that a deal is ready to go. They just have an announcement. That's Sidney Crosby. And I think that it is weird that we heard, oh, it's like, they're dotting I's and crossing T's and whatnot. I mean, is there something going on in Pittsburgh? Do they want to have a special timing for this announcement? Like, what do we think is going on there in terms of getting it done?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, maybe they're trying to work out some kind of a relationship after he retires that would be included in the
Mm,
contract. That's a possibility. Maybe he, I mean, I may be jumping the gun, but maybe he wants an ownership stake in the team and they're negotiating that. We don't know. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's a lot of doubt that a deal will get done with Sidney Crosby. The question is when they announce it, how long is it going to be? And, the Penguins end up being in one of those situations where, as a fan, you don't want to see Sidney Crosby end his career in another uniform. But how much do you pay Sidney Crosby for what he's going to give you going forward, as opposed to what he's already done for you? You don't want to be the team paying a guy for past performance.
right, but he is Sidney Crosby.
Yes,
So
it is
there is,
Sidney Crosby, one of the best ever to lace up the skates.
and essentially the face of your organization. So I think, he has all the power here. That's for sure. But I also think he's going to do the organization a solid. I just think he's going to get some money in order to do him a solid in terms of like term here. I would not be surprised if the number ends in an 87, just because the
Just
current
because it's
cap
Sidney
hit
Crosby.
is 8. Well, his current cap hit is 8.7, so it might as
Yes,
well get a new deal for something less than ends in 87.
5.87. See,
Yeah,
range.
yeah, something like that. But I think the next person on the list that we're going to talk about is Leon Draisaitl. And this is a very interesting case because of Connor McDavid's contract being up the following year. And so there's got to be some sort of coordination about these two contracts. And will one of them end up walking?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, management has said they're making Draisaitl a priority, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to fit both McDavid and Draisaitl under the cap, and you need to be able to build a contending team around them. Now, this year, certainly that worked out. They went all the way to the Cup
Hmm.
final after a very rough first month or so of the season. But, when these new contracts come up, it gets more and more challenging. And in 1 year, he'll be 29 years old. He's still got some prime seasons left where he's going to be playing at a very high level, coming off a 106-point season. If I'm Leon Draisaitl, I know this is my last chance at a really big contract. I don't know how eager I am to take one for the team.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because with Draisaitl, he took a hit in the playoffs this year for like not coming through in the finals.
Right.
And I just wonder if that will have an effect on this future contract. And are they going to wait a little bit longer to re-sign him to have maybe an announcement at the same time with Connor McDavid, so that it's an extension for Connor McDavid and a new contract for Draisaitl, and do a big thing about it? Like, is Draisaitl going to be willing to wait, and will that put him off to wanting to stay with the Oilers. Like I just think it's a really intriguing thing between these two guys, and if they can afford to keep both of them in the
Right.
long run here.
Big question. And then, if the Oilers struggle this season, if let's say they're not in a playoff spot this year, do they consider moving him at the deadline? I couldn't imagine that.
No.
But
I don't see that as possible,
no, I don't see
to
that as
be
likely
honest.
at all. But I mean, there's just a lot of variables at this point, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I think they will try to find a way to keep Draisaitl in Edmonton.
Yeah, I think so too. I just think it's going to be really interesting how the two of them and their salaries and how they manage to have the rest of the team around them, which has been their problem, and
Yep.
could get worse. Especially because I don't know that McDavid is going to go up much because he's already at 12.5, but Draisaitl has a big argument to go up from 8.5.
Yes.
He's being underpaid. So it's going to be interesting.
They'll work it out somehow, or they won't. We'll find out. But yeah, it is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And what do you think, just out of curiosity's sake, if he hits the open market, what is Draisaitl worth?
I mean, I think he's worth at least 10.
Yeah, at least, assuming he has another season like he did, this coming year, if he has another 106-point season, give or take a few.
Yeah, I see 6 years for 10.
6 years for 60, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds about right.
All right. Well, we've got more guys to talk about, including some Toronto Maple Leafs, which have flooded the discourse all season long, and we will get to them and Mikko Rantanen coming up next. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right. The Toronto Maple Leafs have a couple of guys that will be free agents next year, and one of them has been a topic of conversation what feels like for the last 4 years, and that is Mitch Marner. And he is currently has a 10.9 and change at cap hit, and he's only 27, which it feels like he's older than that because the discourse has aged him.
Yeah.
But I think that of the core of this team, he seems to be the one that people think is the most expendable. So is this, some situation where they're going to try and trade him at deadline?
Wow. I mean, what do you, they could probably get quite a haul even for a rental from the right team for Mitch Marner. Why does that sound like a Las Vegas Golden Knights kind of
I know, right?
I mean,
I would not be shocked.
It would not be shocked. They put 3 players on LTIR and sign or trade for Mitch Marner. But no, all kidding aside, I'm not sure why, Marner is the guy who is the most expendable. Based on his age, I think you might want to keep him around a little bit more. But they, like the Oilers, the challenge that the Maple Leafs have is getting, keeping those star players together as much as they can and then surrounding them with talent to have a contending team. It's worked a little better so far for the Oilers than for the Maple Leafs, at least in the postseason. Can Toronto find the right formula?
Well, that's the thing is like I think the big decision they have is, do they hold on to him and see where the team's at until trade deadline and then make a call? And then they got to figure out how to re-sign him if they decide they want to keep him.
Right.
Because if they go past trade deadline, he could walk and go anywhere, right? So they don't want to lose him for nothing. But can they make the right trade if they need to do that and get return that's going to be enough to satisfy the Toronto Maple Leafs fan base?
Yeah, and I think more important, look, you know what? If the Toronto Maple Leafs fan base is angry at the trade initially, but down the road they get the right players and picks and prospects in return and make the team more well-rounded and still hold on to their other star players, it might be the best thing that ever happened to the Maple Leafs in a long time, while still making fans initially very disappointed.
Yeah, and the other Leafs pending free agent that year is John Tavares. And so that is a really interesting situation as well, because he had been on a 7-year deal, but he's 33, so it'll be like 34 next year. Does he get like a 2-year deal with the Leafs to stay there, or does he become a free agent?
And he's got a cap hit of $11 million.
Right.
So
Very clearly, he's not going to get paid $11 million.
no. And, see, to me, if I'm going to part with one guy, it might be Tavares because of his age, where you expect less production from him going forward than you would from Marner. The question, obviously, is it will be more expensive to keep Marner than it would be to keep Tavares.
Right. And is Tavares going to be at a level where, if you think this team is going to stay together for the most part and contend, do you want Tavares for those couple of years in that contention period, or do you not need him? And like, that's where this is it Marner versus Tavares, or is it two completely different situations? I think it's different situations.
It's different situations, but they are intertwined because you have to fit both of them under the cap. And then, here's the other question.
I just don't even think Tavares would make even half of what he's making now.
Probably not, or maybe about half of what he's making now, as far as the cap hit goes. But, and I get the feeling, based on the way he's done things in the past, I would not be surprised if Tavares takes a little bit of a hometown discount to stay in Toronto. It was always his dream to play for the Maple Leafs. He wants, if he's the captain of the first Stanley Cup winning team in Toronto since the days of the original six, that would be, the thrill of a lifetime for a guy like John Tavares. But, it also may be his last chance to make some real money. Not that he probably needs it after all these years of earning as much as he has, but some tough decisions coming up, both for the Maple Leafs management and for Tavares and Marner themselves.
The consternation is going to be high in the Leafs organization, but I think that's why, in my opinion, I think if you're going to make the decision to trade Marner, I think you do it at peak return time. And you have this whole upcoming season to get what you think is peak return. You don't have to wait for trade deadline to do it. And I think if you get the right deal at the right time, put him on the trading block from jump and see what you can get. And if you can build up a bidding war toward the trade deadline and then make your decision then. But I think trading him is the right decision to make for the Leafs.
I think so too. Like I said, it may anger fans, but I think in the long run, it will benefit the Toronto Maple Leafs if they get the right haul.
Yeah. So turning to Mikko Rantanen, he is going to be 28 at the end of next season, although an older 28. His birthday's in the fall. And, I think that with, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar on that team, he is kind of suffering from Marner syndrome in some ways, in terms of just from a pecking order, he comes in third, right?
Right.
But he is that good. And he has incredible scoring and potential to continue to do that. And so how the Avs are going to hold this team together is, I think, another interesting challenge, similar to what the Leafs have.
Yeah, and the Avs have such a complicated cap situation because we don't know if Landeskog will ever be able to return.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't, they stash him on LTIR and they have cap space available. You talk about Rantanen sort of not getting as much attention from fans and not getting as much recognition. But you know what? Coaches and scouts and players know how important and how dangerous Mikko Rantanen is. And I mean, he would be so valuable, not just to the Avalanche, but to any other team that would try to grab him.
Right. So he's at 9.25 right now. Is he worth more than that? Just getting 104 points.
I think so. At this age, at this stage of his career, he'll be 28, almost 29, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you could sign him to a 6 or 7 year deal. Or if you're the Avalanche, try for the 8-year deal to entice him to stay. But I would not want to lose Mikko Rantanen if I am the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, I think the Avs would have to make some deals to get rid of some other cap hits because a lot of their other guys are signed a lot further into the future. Like the guys that are also on expiring contracts next year just make a lot less money. And some of them they can let walk and it's not going to be a big deal, but it's not going to make up for the difference of what you're going to have to pay Rantanen.
Exactly.
So I think it is going to be a tough task for the Avs to figure that out. In the meantime, we have some goaltenders that we want to talk about, maybe a defenseman. We will get to them coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But with the Stanley Cup playoffs and the NBA playoffs in the rearview mirror, we get fewer games. And, that's not easy. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And look, over the summer, you certainly have Major League Baseball. You've got the summer games in Paris. Preseason football has started now, and you've got football futures. So there is plenty to bet on at FanDuel. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So just head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
So looking at the expiring contracts for goaltenders next off season, number one on that list is Igor Shesterkin. Now, I'm fairly confident he will be signing an extension with the New York Rangers. It's just going to be a matter of for what. So his current cap hit is 5.6 or 5.667. And I think that he is being underpaid.
Yeah.
To put it mildly. He'll be 29 at expiry though. So that's starting to get a little bit on the older side. So obviously you're going to pay him a little bit more, maybe a lot more, depending on his agent. But I think that the term on this one is going to be the most interesting part of it for me.
I think, first of all, if I'm Igor Shesterkin, I look at that cap hit and I say, my opening salvo is double it. I may be willing to settle for 9.5 or 10, but 5.666, etc. Give me 11, and I'll come down to 10 if I have to, or 9.5. But talk about underpaid. Igor Shesterkin, one of the best goaltenders in the game today, and not being paid like it. And look, the Rangers are a very talented team, but let's face it, they don't win the President's Trophy this past year without Igor Shesterkin and what he's capable of doing. So if I'm the Rangers, I do everything in my power to make sure Igor Shesterkin stays on Broadway.
So do you pay him more or less than Henrik Lundqvist's contract?
Well, adjusted for inflation or straight up?
I mean, little adjustment for inflation because the cap went up.
Right,
So,
the cap went up. But by cap percentage, I would say yes, he's as valuable to them as Henrik Lundqvist was back in the day.
yeah.
What about you?
So that was a 7-year deal, 8.5.
So with inflation, it'd be what, 9.5, right? Or
9.
kind of in the
I would
range I was
say,
talking about.
yeah. So that's a lot of money in your goalie. I mean, ask the Habs how that went for them. But
Yeah.
I think that does he get the 7-year deal first off? And I think with goaltenders, obviously you can get to a little bit older, right? And it's not as big a deal for the most part, again, except for unfortunately with Carey Price. But I think that, 9 is probably about right. And it's probably a 7-year deal.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm Shesterkin and they offer me 4 or 5 years, I'm out the door. I mean, unless they give me a lot more money per year,
Mm-hmm. It's got to be at least 10. If you're going under 6 years or under, I would say.
Right. And, maybe the compromise is you don't give him the 8th year, as part of the deal. But if I'm Shesterkin and I don't get 7 years from the Rangers, I'll go get it somewhere else.
Yeah. So the other interesting case here is Linus Omark. And obviously he, just went to the Senators this offseason, but his deal was with the Bruins originally. And, his current cap hit is 5 even. I don't know that it goes up much.
No, I don't know either. I think this season will tell us a lot because I heard, you look at his Vezina winning year in 2022, 2023. I mean, a 46-1 record, a 1.9 goals against, a 9.38 save percentage. And yet there were critics that said, well, he was playing in front of such a great team. How much of it was him and how much of it was how good the team was in front of him. How he does this year in front of with an Ottawa Senators team that is nowhere near as good as the Bruins were a couple of years ago, I think that's going to have a big impact on what the market looks like for Linus Omark.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that it's just the thing with the Senators to me is that they're so unpredictable. Like on paper tells me nothing about how they're going to turn out. And that's the way they've been for, as long as I can remember at this point. And I think that you just have to wait on this one. You got to, and that's going to be really unfortunate for the Senators who would like to have some stability, but I just don't think they're going to get it.
I mean, maybe he's very happy in Ottawa and, come February or March before the trade deadline, he says, I like it here. The Senators make him an offer and he stays. Or maybe he's like, get me out of here. I'm not happy. The team isn't good enough, or I don't like living in Ottawa, or the taxes are too high. There are so many variables to sort of figure out. But, I don't think Ullmark is going to get a lot more money. And again, at the age of 32, by the time the contract comes up, how much term is he going to get?
Right. Who knows? But there's one more player we have to touch on, and that's Aaron Ekblad, because he is in his last year, only getting paid a mere $7.5 million average annual value. And the thing with him is that obviously a huge part of the Florida Panthers, and they finally got their Stanley Cup, but he is a very often injured guy. And
Yep.
so the value you're getting out of him isn't 100% there. It seems unfathomable that the Panthers would let him go or trade him at deadline, but do you still have to wait until towards the end of the season to see if he's healthy in terms of negotiating this contract?
Well, that's a double-edged sword, because
Yeah.
if you do plan on trading him and he's not healthy, his value goes way down. So,
Mhm.
if you're looking to trade him at the deadline and he's not playing because he's out with some kind of an injury, you may lose him for nothing, or, get not full value for what could be a very valuable player. He is still at this point, 28 years old, so he'll be 29. When he's healthy, he's as good as any player. But here's the thing. Do you get the feeling he has more value to the Panthers than he would to another team?
Maybe. I
Just
mean, I
because
could,
of how well he fits in there?
yeah, like it's possible. I think that, you know, he's somebody that they can sort of plug and play with, given the fact that he's been injured. But he's just been such a key part of that team in particular and been part of it for so long. But guys leave and go other places and find success. I mean, certainly you look at the run that the LA Kings had, they had guys come in from other teams that were not homegrown or didn't have long-term contracts there, and they put together a winning team. It happens. So I think that this could go either way, but I just think that the Panthers have a big decision to make if they're gonna, reward him early, or they're gonna wait until the last minute because they don't know if he's gonna be healthy.
And it may depend on how much money he's asking for. If he's not asking for the moon, maybe they do lock him up early. If he is, then you got a game of chicken going on between management and his agent.
Yes, you do. All right, that will do it for today's show. We will be back next Friday with more of our off-season content. Gil will be back on Monday with some hosts from around the Locked On NHL network talking about what's going on with their teams. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great weekend, everyone.